Welcome to Buffalo Pregame, your source for live Buffalo football discussion, news, analysis, opinions, and more. Presented by ASM Publications and Bills Digest. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Buffalo Pregame. I'm your host, Alex Brasky, here for ASM Publications and Bills Digest. On tonight's show, we kick off Ravens week and the NFL regular season, which begins this week. I can't believe it's upon us already. The summer goes by so quickly, the offseason as well. The Bills making so many additions, setting the stage for what should be a phenomenal season in Buffalo. On tonight's show, like I said, we'll kick off Ravens week, the opening week across the NFL, but we'll specifically look back at two 2024 meetings between Baltimore and the Bills. What did we learn from those two meetings? What will be different this time around? But before doing so, we'll also dive into the ramifications of Dwayne Carter's season-ending injury and what it means for the Bills' defensive line. Each week on Buffalo Pregame, I'll provide updates on the NFL, NHL, and more via daily articles, podcasts, videos, and more. Please subscribe to Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, along with Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky on Substack, both of which are free of charge. All right, let's get into it. But before we do, it's always a good sign that football is back when Bill Belichick is back doing his thing. And boy, is he in North Carolina now with the Tar Heels, as he released the team's first official depth chart. And if you want to go on X, you'll see that every position has no players listed. So that's a typical Bill Belichick move. And then his interview pregame for tonight's game with Holly Rowe of ESPN, as many are pointing out, was just prime Bill Belichick here already in week one of his season with the North Carolina Tar Heels. So it's always the sign of the season when Bill Belichick is out there, cut off sleeves, doing his thing on the sideline. And we missed him last season, but good to have him back at the college ranks. And I'm not going to lie, I'm starting to like Bill Belichick. Last season, his trip through the media sphere and everything he had to offer on, I believe it was NFL Today. And now, like I said, at the University of North Carolina, excited to see what old Bill has to offer in his dip down to the collegiate ranks. But let's get to the topics at hand here on tonight's show. I can't believe the regular season is upon us already, and we're counting down the days until Sunday night. About an hour from now is about 6 days away from kickoff on this coming Sunday night, and the Ravens and the Bills meeting up for that Divisional Round rematch at Highmark Stadium, the last opening day at the current Highmark Stadium. So plenty of pomp and circumstance will be surrounding the game, not only due to the incredible matchup between these two teams, but also, like I said, all the nostalgia and everything surrounding the final year at this stadium and the new stadium really coming along across the street. It's really starting to take shape. You can see some of the siding being put up, the wind confusion, as they say, and it's going to look like a stadium, truly a stadium in no time. So a lot of excitement surrounding this matchup between the Bills and the Ravens. Bills beat them in the playoffs last year. Ravens got the better of them during the regular season. We'll see what week one has to offer. But Dwayne Carter, first and foremost, tears his Achilles tendon this past Wednesday at practice. He posted a picture on his Instagram page from his hospital bed. He looked like he had a boot on his left foot area. So I would imagine that is the foot that he's dealing with, that Achilles tendon tear, and really a tough break for the Bills' former third-round pick. He was likely set to be second in line, maybe third in line, but I would like to think second in line at one technique behind Daquan Jones to begin the season. Things may have changed when Larry Ogunjobi returned after week 6, a 6-week suspension. But to begin the year, Carter was going to be a significant piece of that defensive tackle rotation. Typically goes about 4-5 deep on game day. Third round pick in 2024. He was a disappointment, dealt with a wrist injury last year, but never really seemed to catch on within this Bills defense during his time since being drafted. And he had a great opportunity during training camp this year. And like I said, just didn't make enough plays to make you think that good things were coming from Dwayne Carter. Like I said, he was going to be a significant piece of this rotation, but that was largely due to Larry Ogunjobi's suspension for the first 6 weeks. I said on a previous episode, I wouldn't have been surprised if Dwayne Carter stayed healthy, if Larry Ogunjobi came back, if they would have cut bait with Dwayne Carter or at least trimmed him down to the practice squad or made him a game day inactive. So I wouldn't say it's a massive loss in terms of this unit's potential and potential to produce, as a lot of eyes are on the Bills' defensive line this year after all the capital that was spent in the draft and also offseason capital as well through free agency with Joey Bosa, Michael Hoyt, and I already mentioned Larry Ogunjobi. So I'm not so sure that Carter was going to have a long-term significant role within this rotation, but just bad news for him as a player. His second year in the league and dealt with the wrist injury last year, missed a few games. I believe it was 5 games with the wrist injury, and now he gets back, a good chance to prove himself on the field during the regular season and dealing with this significant injury. Dealt with it pretty positively on social media, posted a Bible verse. I believe it was John 13:7. I don't want to get it wrong, but it was something along the lines of, you don't know why I'm doing this to you, but soon you'll learn. And I think that's a very positive way to look at any setback in life. And Dwayne Carter has always come across as a very conscientious player, somebody who is a good teammate, somebody who does the little things when he's available. It's just tough that his early career trajectory has taken this turn, and we wish him a speedy recovery. Like I said, a great guy to deal with in the locker room and somebody who I think his teammates will miss in that huddle, somebody who brings leadership, a captain at Duke University. So Dwayne Carter on the mend with a torn Achilles. He'll miss the entirety of the 2025 season. Without him, we might see Jordan Phillips elevated. We all know that he was brought in to the Bills practice squad as a veteran addition. He and Jordan Poyer, 2 retreads coming back to the team and hoping to bring some leadership. But Jordan Phillips might be thrown into the fire a little bit earlier than he thought he might be in his 4th stint with the Bills. But at the same time, I favor Zion Logue here. I think he has more to offer in terms of that run stuffing ability. And not that Dwayne Carter was a stalwart in that regard by any means, but I think the Bills are going to need a little bit more of that than they have in tow right now. You look at Deion Walker, excuse me. I think I'm not the only one. Dwayne Carter and Deion Walker, I get those two confused sometimes, but Deion Walker is not necessarily your true one technique, stick him in the middle at nose tackle and let him plug the holes. So I think you're going to have Zion Logue maybe fill a little bit of the role. Maybe it's week to week. Maybe you go Jordan Phillips one week, Zion Logue another week, and rotate it through on your practice squad, as I said before, until Larry Ogunjobi comes back. But I wouldn't count Zion Logue out of this conversation. And I tweeted about it kind of jokingly, but at the same time, and as Nathan Oliver comments, gives Big Phil the real chance to show TJ and Walker the chance to eat. So I think he's saying 2 things there. Gives all 3 of those players a chance. And I would tend to agree with you, Nathan. But like I said, don't count out Zion Logue in this conversation. We also had a comment earlier from DJ. Let's go Buffalo. Appreciate you, DJ. That was an early comment, 2:58 this afternoon, I think. And then we also have Ravens will come out with a vengeance. Bills lose, not too close. Then the Bills run off 5 straight. That coming from what we got here is a failure to communicate. Interesting. On X, he's predicting 31-17, a Ravens win. So we'll see. We'll get to my predictions later this week. And T-Jab saying here, the Bills should seriously consider bringing in, that's Christian Wilkins. He was released by the Las Vegas Raiders. Very interesting situation out there. And the former Miami Dolphin has a little bit of a history with Josh Allen. That would be interesting to fit Christian Wilkins into this locker room. I don't think you're going to see the Bills dip their toe in those waters. But hey, another free agent, we'll talk about him later, Jabril Peppers. I might be interested in him at the safety position, knowing the inconsistency of Cole Bishop's availability and everything going on at that position for the Bills. And Nathan Oliver chimes back in. What has Logue shown? Hasn't shown a whole lot. I won't lie to you, but it's kind of out of necessity here. I think against a Baltimore Ravens team, especially with Jordan Phillips just being picked up on the practice squad, Zion Logue's been working out throughout the offseason within this system, and I know that Jordan Phillips is common to this system, so it's not like it won't be riding a bike for him. But Zion Logue has been through training camp. He's played in these preseason games. I think Zion Logue, just don't count him out in the conversation, especially come week one against a team that loves to run the ball with Derrick Henry, who's in the top 10 of the NFL top 100 at age 31 or 32 or whatever he is, coming off a 2,000-yard season, I believe, last year. So something to watch for the Ravens going into this game. But as I was saying before, I just went off on that comment tangent. I also tweeted out kind of humorously and in jest, but it got a good response, is the one before it did when I did it with Jordan Poyer. I said, and then I posted a picture of Eli Anku. I posted, bring him home, and a couple hundred people liked it. Also, plenty of people in the comment section voiced their displeasure in terms of that possibility, not wanting Eli Anku, another retread, to come back here. But hey, I wouldn't count it out. He's been a talented run defender in the past. I'm not sure what his status is at this time, but hey, bring back Eli Anku, bring back all the ex-Bills and make a run at this Super Bowl championship. The rookies, I mentioned Deion Walker, TJ Sanders also should see increased snaps with Dwayne Carter being out early in the season. I think they might be thrown into the fire a little bit more, maybe see what Deion Walker has as a run stuffer and try to, like I said, throw him into the fire and iron sharpens iron situation for Deion Walker. But TJ Sanders, more of a pass rusher. I'm not sure you'll see him used the way that the Bills were planning on using Dwayne Carter, but we'll see how that all shakes out come week one against the Baltimore Ravens. But in short, Dwayne Carter out for the season, Achilles tendon tear. I don't think it's a huge deal in terms of personnel and what you're expected to do defensively this year, but a really tough break for a 2024 third-round pick in his second season, looking to make some noise this year, and now a significant setback. And I think it's going to take a while for him to come back from this. It's a position where you need that base. You need that strong base, and I think it might be tough for a player at his position. But hey, well, we'll see the recovery time. We wish him all the best in his recovery coming up. That is Dwayne Carter. As T-Job chimes back in, Wilkins is the most dominant defensive lineman available. Forget the past history and focus on the potential. Once Henry runs all over us, hopefully they will reconsider Wilkins. And I haven't done my due diligence on Christian Wilkins. I'm not positive that he is a bona fide run stuffer. Let's see. Christian Wilkins. This is good research here. Run stuffer. Let's see. Yeah. High potential pass rusher. No, that's a different player. Yeah, I think he's a mix, Christian Wilkins. Like I said, I haven't done my due diligence on him. Yeah, maybe less of a pass rusher as I'm reading quickly. Kingsley Jonathan, as Nathan Oliver chimes in, another ex-Bill, maybe on his way back, but that's a different position. He plays out on the edge, so I wouldn't expect the Bills to fill in that position. But all right, let's dive into Ravens week. Taking a look back at 2024 matchups, the two meetings split between these two teams. The Ravens, like I said, won during the regular season, not much of a game. The Bills won in the playoffs, a game that kind of came down to the end and a failure on the Ravens' part to tie that game at the end. But we'll start with the week 4 matchup, 35-10, the Ravens win. And if you recall, that was the game in which Derrick Henry started the game on the first play from scrimmage for the Ravens. He went 87 yards for the touchdown, finished with 199 on 24 carries, also had a receiving touchdown. It was all Derrick Henry, all the time in this game. And the Bills were really manhandled from pillar to post in this one. And it's no surprise. You look at the injuries that they had sustained going into this game. You had Matt Milano out with a biceps injury, Terrell Bernard out with a pec injury, Taron Johnson did not play with a forearm injury. Taylor Rapp was lost during this game with a concussion. He missed the next week. And then Josh Allen hurt his lower back, got drilled when the Bills were trying to make a comeback in this game. They tried to pull off a weird, I think it was a wide receiver reverse pass dialed up by Joe Brady, one of the most regrettable decisions and one of the few that he's had as Bills offensive coordinator. But Josh Allen gets knocked on his tuchus and really bangs that lower back, and it was just all Ravens from there on out. The Bills lost a fumble on that play, and Josh Allen held without a touchdown in this game. Just 180 yards passing. He was already dealing with the hand injury that he kind of dealt with throughout the course of last season. That was kind of at the peak of that hand injury impacting him perhaps as much as it did his non-throwing hand. He sustained the injury, I believe, week 1, sometime early in the season. So that glove being worn throughout the course of last year's campaign and early in the year, I think that hand injury probably had more impact than it did as the season progressed. And we have a couple of questions here. Silas, I'll get to your questions. Oh, there he is. Whittle from Twitter. All right, we'll get to your questions shortly. Thanks for chiming in. A couple of questions about Trey White and Benford. But just wrapping up this first matchup, 21-3 Ravens at halftime. Bills came back, cut it to 21-10. But after that play where Josh Allen lost the fumble and sustained that minor back injury, really was all Ravens from there. Not much of a question. Justice Hill, the team's leading receiver, 678 and a touchdown. Running game for the Bills never got going in this one after they fell behind early. James Cook, 9 carries, 39 yards. And like I said, it was very tough to come by offense, that is, for the Bills in this one. And injuries were the entire story in this game. If you look at the Bills defensively, and when you get off to that rough of a start with Derrick Henry just running it down your throat, you don't have your 2 starting linebackers. You don't have your nickel cornerback who plays physical up in the box very often. And you don't have Taylor Rapp, another physical player who can help out up front and run support. So it's kind of a wash, in my opinion, that last year's regular season game. There's not a whole lot to take away. We'll get to some of my takeaways later, but just to run through the divisional round quickly, the Bills had Milano, Bernard, Taron Johnson, Taylor Rapp back to start the game, at least in the Bills' 27-25 win. Rapp went out early. Cole Bishop came on once again. So just to highlight my takeaways coming up, that's something that maybe Bishop can pull from. He's had some experience playing against this team 2 times last season. We'll see if he can make an impact in his third go-round. Taron Johnson got hurt late in this game in the divisional round and led to that off-season labrum surgery that he underwent, and maybe didn't impact the start of his 2025 season, but he ushered into it slowly with a non-contact red jersey during the off-season program, and hasn't been much of an issue since, other than that kind of Evel Knievel style play that he put forth during the preseason game, I think against the Bears, just flying through the window, the Simpsons meme that was posted by, I think, Jarrett Bailey of Sporting News and all everything SB Nation that he's involved with. But Taron Johnson got hurt late in that game. All of these guys who returned due to injury made an impact in that divisional round. And I think that's going to be a big difference this time around. The Bills are as healthy as can be in terms of those main players on defense. We'll get to the cornerback position, as Whittle is asking about later. But I think in this game, you need that run stopping ability. And all these players that I'm talking about really come into play when you discuss that phase of the game. But in that divisional round, as I said, all 4 of these guys, Rapp, Milano, Bernard, Johnson, all made an impact. Rapp had an interception before he went out. Matt Milano had 3 quarterback hits. Terrell Bernard forced a fumble, and I think he recovered his own fumble forced. Mark Andrews, the catch near midfield. Bernard comes in with the peanut punch, a huge swing in that game. 3 turnovers forced in that game by the Bills. Taron Johnson also 3 tackles and a pass defense. So it wasn't a whole lot from Josh Allen in this game, aside from a couple of rushing touchdowns and close, an efficient 16 to 22, 127 yards, carried the ball 10 times, only had, I think, 20 yards, if I recall correctly. Didn't write it down here. But James Cook was really the engine for the offense, 17 for 67, a bunch of chunk gains for Cook. I think his longest gain was 11, but he had a couple of first downs on his own, or at least close to it, that Cook really helped the offense sustain itself for the Bills during that game. Ray Davis scored, kind of vultured a touchdown from Cook in near the goal line, and Khalil Shakir was big in both of these games. Long reception of 34 yards during the divisional round matchup. But as I said before, turnovers were the story for the Bills in their ability to bounce back against the Ravens the second time around. They win the turnover battle 3-0. DeMar Hamlin helps force a fumble on a scramble for Lamar Jackson to the right. And then early in the game, a ball thrown directly to Taylor Rapp on the right side from Lamar Jackson. Not sure if there was a miscommunication on that play, but I just remember Taylor Rapp wide open in space, ran it back, celebrated with the crowd. That was before he went out a little bit later in that game. And then I mentioned Terrell Bernard, the big punch out late. So it was turnovers for the Bills in this game. And the running game also really helping the offense, as I said before, sustain itself throughout the course of the game. The Ravens had no trouble moving the ball. 416 total yards, average gain per play, 7.3 yards for the Ravens, 4.6 yards for the Bills. Without the turnovers, I think Baltimore wins that game in the divisional round. But then again, I know they say that turnovers are unsustainable. It's been pointed out throughout the offseason. The Bills are that one team or one of the teams in the league where you can really count on their ability to create takeaways. So I'm not saying that they're going to get 3 on Lamar Jackson in this game. I think that's a lot to expect, but I wouldn't discount that element in this game and just chalk it up to, oh, they got lucky. They created 3 turnovers. That's something that this Bills defense has proven they are able to do over the course of the past few years. So turnovers. I think you're going to need them from the Bills, who are a little bit banged up entering this game. And it is fortunate, like I said, they have Milano, they have Bernard, they have Taron Johnson, they have Taylor Rapp in tow. But we bring up Whittle's question. What's the latest on Tre'Davious White and Christian Benford? Are they expected to be at practice this week? Both of them, I think, had off-the-field commitments this past weekend. At least I know that Tre'Davious White was at Deion Dawkins' car show, and he was interacting with media. I think Trainwreck Sports spoke with him, and he was in really good spirits, walking around. I didn't see if he had a brace on his ankle or his lower leg, whatever he's dealing with, but it would seem if he sustained a significant injury, he wouldn't be at that type of thing. He wouldn't be walking around. He certainly wouldn't be talking to any form of media. So I would say it's 50-50 for Trey White returning to practice, whereas before I saw that, it was 70-30 not returning to practice. So I think that was an encouraging sign, just kind of reading the tea leaves over the weekend. But at the same time, I could see the Bills holding him out for week 1 and saying, listen, we got to get you right. We got to get you to 100%. This isn't something that we can have linger throughout the course of the season. Trey White has already had some of that athleticism sapped due to previous injuries. And if he doesn't take care of this one the right way, get the appropriate rest and rehab as best he can, he's really going to have no chance to impact the game. And the Bills are going to need him, particularly early in the season. You have Max Hairston placed on the short-term IR, so you're going to need Tre'Davious White out there at some point, whether it be week 1 or, like I said, if the Bills do decide to rest him. But I think it was a good sign for him. And then Benford, I can't remember if it was this past weekend or the weekend before he had an off-season commitment. But nonetheless, he did say that all he needed was some rest previously. And I know some people are talking about concussions and is he in the concussion protocol? The team would have to announce that. So I don't think he's dealing with anything like that. At least nothing has been reported. We saw him off to the side with athletic trainers this past week, but we wait till Wednesday, the first day of the NFL regular season, where we get official injury designations and an official injury report. So Silas Whittle, my man on Twitter, a very good question there. So the Bills are dealing with some injury trouble there, but it's good to have that core, that run-stopping core, and then you have your defensive line, sans Dwayne Carter, pretty much at full strength. So going into this game, you're going to need that run stopping. I think it would be a little bit more concerning without a Tre'Davious White and having to rely on a Jamarcus Ingram, a Dorian Strong as a rookie, a Dane Jackson off the practice squad. I'd be much more concerned if the Bills were playing. Not that Lamar Jackson doesn't scare me as a passer, but the Ravens like to run it. That is the concern here for the Bills in this game. And if you're going to have one or the other, I'd rather have, like I said, my run-stopping core than my coverage unit in full health. So takeaways from the two matchups last year. Injuries played a large role in that first game. It's tough to lose four of your best players on defense. You saw when the Bills got Milano back for that second game, it really made a big difference. And Milano specifically, used as a spy at times, I think he's going to make a really big difference against Lamar Jackson. And he had 3 quarterback hits, I believe, in that game against the Ravens in the divisional round, did Matt Milano. So he's going to be all over Lamar Jackson. He's looked really good in terms of his quick fire ability ever since the offseason program began. So excited to see how Matt Milano can really impact this game against Lamar Jackson. And also Derrick Henry in run support. And I mentioned it earlier, Cole Bishop played in both of these games against the Ravens last year. His experience against this team could help him hit the ground running for the Bills in a very key season for the second-year player. It's a tough team out of the gate. Lamar Jackson's a very tough player to contend with, and Derrick Henry can steamroll even defensive linemen at times. So Cole Bishop's going to have to be at his best, but I think maybe where the issue for Cole Bishop in the past has been his head has been spinning at times, a failure to process quickly. Maybe seeing some familiarity from this Baltimore Ravens offense may pay dividends for Cole Bishop in this one. And I can't say enough how much Mark Andrews really blew that divisional round game for the Ravens. He had an early drop. He had that fumble ripped out by Terrell Bernard, and then he dropped the 2-point pass at the end of the game that would have tied it for the Ravens and potentially sent it to overtime. I can't say enough how poor of a game that Mark Andrews had in such a big spot for the Baltimore Ravens. If he makes those 3 plays, it could be an entirely different game, especially the 2-point pass. I know that the Bills had about a minute and a half remaining at that time, but he drops that 2-point pass right in front of the right pylon, falling back. Tough play considering everything, you got to make that play. I mean, you're an NFL tight end. You've had a lot of success in the league. Mark Andrews really came up short for the Ravens in that one. And the 3 turnovers are tough. He committed one of them, but dropping that 2-point pass, just inexcusable. I don't know how he could have recovered from that mentally. I would have gone in the tank. That would have been a really tough thing to get over, but he's going to be back on the horse this year. Isaiah Likely, the Ravens' talented tight end, uncertain to play in this game. He was one of 3 critical Ravens to miss practice to start the week, as Likely is out with, I can't remember, but Patrick Ricard has a soft tissue injury, and then Jair Alexander, who they brought in through free agency, was also out to start this week of practice, as he hasn't practiced since August 9th. So 3 potentially key players for the Ravens could be out in this game, as you potentially hear the fire trucks go by here in Batavia. So Mark Andrews is going to be needed in this game one way or the other, and he's going to have to respond in a big way after 3 tough plays in that divisional round matchup against the Bills last season. And we'll close out our analysis of those last 2 matchups with the question, will things be different this time around? And I've already revealed my game-by-game predictions in the latest issue of Bills Digest. Also, once again, a bit of a surprise for you OG subscribers on the cover of this month's issue. But I already went game by game with the Bills schedule, so be sure to check that out. And I'll wait until later this week to give my in-depth game by game win-loss prediction. But I think this is going to be a tough game for the Bills to win. The Ravens have the best roster in football, and I don't expect they're going to lose the turnover battle, like I said, 0-3 this time around. I think they're going to make sure that they're buttoned up. They've had a whole off season to prepare. Things could always go south, and like I said, the Bills do a great job in forcing those takeaways, but I think the Ravens are just going to have too much firepower on the offensive side of the ball. One thing to watch is if Likely plays in this game. Is he likely to play or is he unlikely to play? But he was the Ravens' leading receiver in that divisional round matchup, 4 receptions, 73 yards, and a touchdown. He's become such a key cog in what they do through the passing game. So that will be something to monitor. But they still have DeAndre Hopkins, who they brought in this offseason. They already have Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. So it'll be interesting to see the distribution of targets in the Ravens passing game. But those 3 losses, Patrick Ricard, Jair Alexander, potential losses, I should say, and Isaiah Likely will be something to monitor throughout the course of practice. As Areola Grande, again, one of my favorite names on here. I feel like it wouldn't surprise me whether the Bills came out and put the world on notice or if we get trampled and the D gives up 40+. So you're really stepping out on a ledge there, Areola. Why don't you take a stance and pick one or the other? But hey, I get what you're saying. This does have a variation of outcomes just due to it being week 1 and also some key injuries on both sides. I mentioned the cornerback position and also the tight end position for the Baltimore Ravens. But that's going to about do it for analysis of this upcoming matchup, as we'll save a little bit more for later this week, and especially on Wednesday when we get some clarity on Trey White and Christian Benford. As Whittle also says, he was at that first week 4 game, the trick play down 11 while driving, went as wrong as possible. Yeah, I don't think you're going to see any wide receiver reverse passes for the Bills. And no doubt Humphrey and Kyle Hamilton I'm blanking on Humphrey's first name. He went down with an injury in that second game against the Bills. I'm not sure. Marlon Humphrey. I think they were both all pro last year, Marlon Humphrey and Kyle Hamilton. Hamilton had, I think, over 100 tackles for the Ravens last year. So no doubt they have to get those two under control. And Zay Flowers is a problem on the outside. So if Likely doesn't play, I think obviously the game plan shifts a little bit more to wide receiver heavy than potentially tight end heavy, as the Ravens tend to like to do things with Likely over the middle of the field. But yeah, Zay Flowers is not an easy player to contend with. And if the Bills are down 2 cornerbacks, Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers, a tough duo to contend with on the outside. Benford is not out, Areola. Benford is not out. He is it's kind of unclear. If I said he was out, I apologize. I didn't mean to say he was out. He may be out. But as I mentioned earlier in the show, I think things are trending in the right direction, not only for Christian Benford, but for Tre'Davious White as well. So if I misspoke there, Scott also questioning me, I do apologize. Talking a little extemporaneously here. Going on 35 minutes. So if I did make that mistake, my apologies. T-Jab chiming in, Baltimore's defense is much healthier and has more standout players than our defense. This game will be decided by the defense. Baltimore should be favored. I think it's an appropriate number right now. The last I saw it was 1.5 for the Bills, as they are favored in this game at home. Home field typically worth 2 to 3 points, depending on who you ask. So if you use that metric, the Bills are technically underdogs. Yes, 1.5 point favorites on the book. But like I said, home field typically worth 2 to 3 points. So if you go under that assumption, it's not as much. As Scott chimes in, we got Josh Allen. They got Lamar Jackson. So 2 MVPs going up against one another. So it should be a good clash between these two teams. I'll reveal my in-depth prediction later this week. But if you want an early check-in on that, make sure to get the latest issue of Bills Digest, a little bit of a surprise on the cover for you OG subscribers that remember back in the day. And John Robert, thank you so much. He's always quick to remind me, as I totally blanked during this episode. Like and share this episode and also subscribe to the channel on YouTube. It would really do me a big service, would really help me out plenty if you were to go to the YouTube app, search Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky, subscribe to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on there, and like this video and as many videos as you can within about 20 to 30 seconds. Don't want to take up too much of your time, but if you could go through, throw me a couple likes, help spread the word to your friends and family, maybe share it with them. And like I said, subscribe to the channel as well on YouTube. It would really do me a big service. But a few notes out here, and T-Jab, thanks for the tip of the cap there, as I will continue to keep up as much of the great work as I'm capable of over these next several months. It's sure to be an exciting season for the Buffalo Bills. But a few notes here before we close out the show. Once again, Allen and Bernard named captains for the Bills. It's Allen's 5th straight season, I think, as a captain, while Terrell Bernard is in his 2nd season as a team captain. I thought maybe Christian Benford deserved a nod, and then someone on Twitter, I apologize, I'm blanking on the name, pointed out that Deion Dawkins would be a nice addition, and I think both of those would be good additions. I'm a fan of maybe not a million captains, but 4 or 5 is a sweet spot for me. I think 2 is too few. I know some people like that, but I would have liked to see Christian Benford, and like I said, someone on Twitter pointed out that they would have liked to see Deion Dawkins. The Bills also have that leadership council that I think they introduced last year. So Benford and Dawkins, I'm sure, will be in high consideration for a spot on that leadership council. And Terrell Bernard, he won't make many top 10 lists entering the season. Maybe if he puts forth a huge year, he starts entering that conversation in this coming offseason. But he's one of the most valuable pieces anywhere in the league. What he does for the Bills cerebrally, pre-snap, setting things up, it's really, really impressive. So I think well-deserved for Bernard, well-deserved for Allen. I would have liked to see a couple more, but then again, I'm not going to get all worked up about it. Scott says he likes the 2 captains, and Ariola says that Tyreek's captaincy got revoked. Yep, Tyreek Hill for the Dolphins, all things peachy keen out there, but they're stripping the captaincy from one of their top players. That can't be good news. I saw that the Dolphins put, I think it was a pool table or pop a shot or a putting green, something in their locker room. I tweeted it out. That'll be gone by week 6. They'll be making that move by about week 6, vacating any games or ping pong, like I mentioned, pop a shot, bubble hockey, anything like that. They'll take it out of the locker room by week 6. In the Bills locker room, it's interesting. They have ping pong, they have cornhole, they do have bubble hockey, and I think those are really the 3 games that the Bills have in their locker room, their current locker room in the field house. So I think Bills games are going to last past week 6. We'll see with the Miami Dolphins. Pod Junkie, I think our defense will surprise folks, and hopefully the coaches have some good schemes planned. Go Bills. And I agree with you. I think the Bills defense is going to surprise some folks up front, especially. I think Joey Bosa really has a big, big season in store for everybody, especially if he can stay healthy, obviously. So I'm with you there, Pod Junkie, on the Bills defense surprising some folks this year. And lastly, I'll just quick comment on the rivalry uniforms. Not a huge fan, but I can see the appeal. I'm not telling anyone what to like. I'm a Penn State football fan, so I like the comparison there. But for NFL jerseys, I expect a little bit more. It's like the Cracker Barrel logo that they tried to insert recently. I think they went back to the old one after they got the vitriol from the Crackle Barrelians, or whatever you call their fan base, Cracker Mafia. Cracker or Barrel Mafia. I don't know. Cracker Mafia doesn't sound too good. But there's no character in these uniforms for the Bills, and they look very similar to those UB uniforms with the buffalo across the chest. I really like the promo that the Bills video and social media team put out on, like I said, social media. That was chef's kiss. Without that promo, I'm not sure we get the reaction that we do, but that team is so talented, and the icy appeal is very clean in the way that we went about it through the visuals that they put out there on social media. Well, it sold me a little bit on the idea. So we'll continue with Bills coverage as the week goes, Whittle. So you'll have to continue to follow along. We'll do full-fledged pre-week 1 coverage leading up to the week 1 season opener this Sunday night at Highmark Stadium. So stay tuned, and I appreciate everybody for joining us. But before we get off here, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel, as John Robert reminded us a little bit earlier. Go to the YouTube app, subscribe, share this with your friends, and also like this stream. And we'll get out of here with a John Robert comment. With Dwayne Carter being injured, they may call up Jordan Phillips for the first games, then demotion when Larry Ogunjobi comes back, in his opinion. And yeah, you're not off base there, John. We talked about it right at the top of the episode, and I think Zion Logue will also have consideration there. But thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we will see you next time.